Ian actually purchased this book that's been the subject of great controversy. And I have this tweet. I looked up on Amazon. This book is gay. It's called, and Ian has purchased it right here.
On the back, it says, this book is for, underlined, everyone, regardless of gender or sexual preference. This book is for anyone who's ever dared to wonder. This book is for you. They sell it to 14 to 17-year-olds on Amazon.
Amazon says reading age is 14 to 17. You can see here at the bottom. Yet in the book, it teaches you and explains how to use adult sex apps.
Yeah, explicitly.
So this is what happens. You have, for whatever reason, people on the left, either because they're overt pedophiles or because overt tribalists will defend anything that the right opposes. You end up with a book like this in grade schools. There's a teacher who provided this book to her middle schoolers, and they called the police on her, and she was removed. Mm-hmm. And this is what happens. A teacher provided this book to middle schoolers. The book shows pictures of sex acts, explains extremely disgusting activities that would cause serious illness. Like, okay, what people need to understand is there are activities that people engage in when it comes to adult stuff that will injure you and give you infections and diseases. And I'm talking about E. coli. And I don't want to be gross, but I'm going to have to describe it for y'all. We try to keep it family friendly, so earmuffs for your kids. But the book describes consuming feces. Okay, you can die from things like this.
Wait, are you serious? I didn't even know that was in there. I knew this was perverse. I didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
I'm fairly certain.
I haven't seen that part yet.
I'm fairly certain we talked about that before. I want to double check, but I'm pretty sure it talks about, yeah.
Look, maybe, and also maybe I shouldn't be so surprised, right? Because there's a lot of perversity associated with this particular set of life choices.
I understand why someone might think this is a good idea, because like, okay, they're thinking kids don't have enough sexual education. We need to prep these young kids that don't have good family lives ahead of time.
It does.
Confirmed.
Oh my god.
Yeah, here, let me see. It is in the book.
Excuse for it. That's it, dude. That is sickening. That is terrible. Sickening. Jail.
Right, and so
jail.
What happens when? So to clarify, though, the description is in the glossary explaining what the act is and how to do it. So when parents see this stuff, they say, "Hey, I don't want my kid reading that." And what happens? You get that woman from the Majority Report, Emma, being like, "I don't believe in censorship. I think I'm like, should this be in school?" She's like, "Well, I don't agree with censorship." She wants kids to read.
But then
this
you
stuff.
asked her if Penthouse should be in schools, and then the conversation just changed after that. Like, she didn't say yes, and she didn't really say no. I don't remember exactly. But it's a good point. Do you want Penthouse in schools? Do you want like nudie magazines for 13 and 14-year-olds to look at? There's pictures of nude. There's a drawing of a naked woman right in there on like page 188 or something like that. Like explicit with arrows pointing to the different private parts, and like that's what kids need to understand. Private parts. Those are private. Those are for you. If someone ever messes with your privacy and your private, you tell an adult, you tell your parents. Like that is this kind of is just. But I'm coming from a different generation, man. I didn't have the internet until I was like 14. Yeah. I didn't see porn until I was 14. I didn't, and for young kids that slip onto some of that at the age of 6, I don't know. It's a different reality for me how you teach kids about this kind of thing.
It even has they draw a picture of Grindr.
Oh my gosh!
Like in the back, explains what a glory hole is.
On page 182, it says, "Note: Grindr is specifically for 18 and up." But
Emma
here's
said
how
it was
you use
a good
Grindr.
book when it was brought up, by the way, too. She's like, "Oh, it's good," and then you guys were like, "Well, there's a description of gay hookup apps," and someone was showing this to 10-year-olds, and she's like, "Why do you get these anecdotes?"
If a child reads this and comes in the back and comes to the back that explains consuming feces, you could die. Mm-hmm. Why would Amazon think a 14 to 17-year-old should be reading something like this? Mm-hmm. And they make the argument that, kids have access to the internet these days. Maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
These websites are supposed to have blocks on them. You're not supposed to allow kids to be looking at this stuff.
The idea that, kids can see other disgusting things in other disgusting places, so let's show them disgusting things in their school where they ideally should be safe from this kind of perversity.
I understand.
It even explains amyl nitrate.
Wasn't that like bath salts, or is that like how you... What is that?
I'm not going to get into it.
All right.
It's a substance used in...
like crazy sex parties and all that stuff.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, on 182, they're like, Grindr is explicitly, this is what I don't get. I understand you want to tell a kid ahead of time things they got to watch out for.
And here are the
in life.
phone numbers in the back of organizations to call to get more information and more access.
That's
disgusting. They call it advocacy.
There's a difference between warning children about what's to come and showing them how to do the things they're not supposed to do.
Right.
When it says this is for 18 and up, this app, but here's exactly how you use it. You upload a photo, and it says you upload a photo. Like, it tells them you do it. You do this thing. I'm going to read it piece by piece. It's just so disturbing. Note, Grindr also has an age minimum of 18 years old. It's in bold. Then the next paragraph, how sex apps work, sex apps work. Upload a tiny pic of yourself to the app. Like, it's for 18-year-olds. You don't tell them how to do it. Here you go.
Also, the idea that you can get away with something like that in a book that's being marketed to children by simply saying, oh, you have to be 18 or up. Well, this stuff is in schools. It's being shown to children. Amazon's selling it to children as young as 14 years old. There was a teacher who was showing it to 10-year-olds. And the idea that you would give somebody a guide on how to use these hookup apps as if it's rocket science and you need a guide to know how to log in. You're clearly directing these kids to do this. Like, you're clearly directing them to do this. So sick. So sick.
The main point was, Amazon says 14 to 17-year-olds. What do you think would happen if you went to a playground with a bunch of 14-year-olds and started teaching them how to use Grindr?
Jail.
You'd be arrested.
As you should be. Yep.
But when it comes to what they're doing in schools, it's all protected. And then when we ask a simple question to a leftist who comes on this show, comes on the Culture War podcast, how hard is it for them to just be like, now I get it, those books shouldn't be in school? Mm-hmm. Instead, they say, I don't believe in censorship, so allow it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, but if you wanted to have
argument.
a Bible in a school library, right? It's so funny how two-faced they are, right? And it's clear that they're not interested in either free speech or combating censorship, because none of them were saying that schools not being able to teach creationism meant that Christians didn't have free speech. All of the arguments they're making for this perverse nonsense are arguments that they obviously didn't make in favor of people teaching their children their values about the Christian faith. They weren't saying, well, you know, when kids get old enough, they're going to learn about Christianity anyway, so we should tell them about it now. Like, that's kept as far away from public schools as possible. But guidebooks that teach children how to eat feces and use gay hookup apps are not kept away from schools for some reason. And when someone tries to keep it away from schools, we call them a tyrant. That's where our culture's at right now.
Parents called the police on a teacher who showed this to their kids, to the middle school kids.
Good for them.
Yeah.
This is why Target's getting stock dropped. This is why Bud Light's suffering, because these companies, they're just marching along like, don't know, don't care. We're just going to do whatever we're told to do. And parents are saying, no.
Right.
No, we've had enough of this stuff. There was that, remember Nick Merckx, the gamer, when he was like, leave the kids alone, and they went nuts on him.
Yep.
And I guess what the sentiment was, he recently became a father. Yep. Now you get it. Now you're like, how dare you show my children these things? And parents started seeing it, and now there's a backlash. I think this could be one of the Democrats' biggest weaknesses. Trump was recently at a rally, and he was like, you know, I could talk, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, I talk about lowering taxes, nobody cares. I talk about culture war stuff, everybody starts cheering. Yes. Because taxes are like a boring thing we deal with periodically and try and figure out the right number. Typically we want it to go down. Everybody wants it to go down. But right now we're dealing with an existential threat targeting children. This has got people riled up like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, rightfully so. I'm curious, what path forward do you see here? What do you think families should be doing? What do you think it's possible to do within the guidelines of the law? Also, as a lawyer, I mean, who can be sued? Who can charges be pressed against for these kinds of things?
Look, I mean, there's a lot of parents who are stepping up across the country who are saying no more and doing things like, I mean, look, if you're a parent and you have a teacher showing your kids explicit material, you should, I think, in under the right circumstances, report it to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. But you also have all kinds of other ways that you can do things. You can sue the school district. You can get the materials, demand that the materials are removed from the libraries. I mean, just simple steps, showing up, going to school board meetings, showing up, talking to your teachers, talking to your principals. Because, you know, ultimately, you know, we are in that place, I think, as a culture, as a country, where it is we're at a societal inflection point. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you know, which direction do we go? Do we tolerate more of this because that's what we're going to get if we don't stop it, right? Or do we say no, enough is enough? And so a lot of folks are using courts of public opinion to advance the ball and try to defend not I wouldn't say even conservative values. I mean, they are conservative values, but just traditional American values, human values, things that have been understood for millennia, and that now are just being tolerated. That book is disgusting. It has no place in a school.
There's Snopes highlighted a section from the book. I want to find it in the book. Who put the notes in the book? Was it
Kara did that.
Oh, okay. So maybe the notes show. No, there's is that it? How to argue with Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, so Ian and I were going back and forth between the show. He was like reading the supposed, like these objections to the Bible, and they were all very weak. They're all very bad.
Yeah,
and also objections to Islamic teaching on it.
The book instructs young kids, I'm going to say kids because it's sold to 14 to 17-year-olds. The book instructs kids how to argue against religion, Christianity, Islam. I want to talk about gay sex.
So right at the beginning of the chapter that starts talking about sex, it says, this chapter is about sex, therefore it has sex in it. Well, duh. If you're a younger reader and you feel you aren't ready for the finer details of same-sex pairings, then simply skip this whole chapter. However, before you do, I'd like to remind you that we taught you all about straight sex when you were 11 years old during 6th grade. The fact that they didn't also teach you what same-sex couples do is nothing less than institutionalized homophobia. Straight sex was presented as the norm to make 5% of the population feel abnormal. Is there something icky about gay sex? Is there something wrong with it? I challenge any politician to discuss this with me. I will ruin them. This chapter is simply all the stuff teachers should be saying if they want to be inclusive of people with same-sex feelings. 2 things I want to point out. The first sentence, the first couple of sentences in the introduction is, if you feel you aren't ready, skip this. It then says, however, before you do, I want to remind you, meaning if you're not ready, consider why you should read it anyway. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.